श्री राधा नील माधव की। संसार दावा नललीढलोक त्राणाय कारुण्या घना घना त्वम्। संसार दावा नललीढलोक त्राणाय कारुण्या घना घना त्वम्। प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणार्णवस्य वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणारविन्दम्। प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणार्णवस्य वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणारविन्दम्। महाप्रभो कीर्तन नित्य गीता वादित्रमाद्यन् मनसोरसेन। रोमाञ्चकं पाश्रुतरङ्गभाज वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम्। रोमाञ्चकं पाश्रुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम्। श्रीविग्रहाराधन नित्यनाना शृङ्गारतन्मन्दिरमार्जनाधो। युक्तस्य भक्तांश्च नियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम्। युक्तस्य भक्तांश्च नियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम्। चतुर्विधा श्रीभगवत्प्रसाद स्वाद्वन्मतृप्तान् हरिभक्तसङ्गान् चतुर्विधा श्रीभगवत्प्रसाद स्वाद्वन्मतृप्तान् हरिभक्तसङ्गान् कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दाम् श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्ना श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्ना प्रतीक्षणा स्वाधनलोलुपस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् प्रतीक्षणा स्वाधनलोलुपस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् निकुञ्जयोनो रतिकेलिसीधे यायालिभे युक्तेरपेक्षणीया निकुञ्जयोनो रतिकेलिसीधे यायालिभे युक्तेरपेक्षणीया तत्रातिदक्षा अतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् तत्रातिदाक्षाद् अतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् साक्षाधरित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तस्तथा भाव्यत एव सद्भिः साक्षाधरित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रैरुक्तस्तथा भाव्यत एव सद्भिः किन्तु प्रभोर्या प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् किन्तु प्रभोर्य प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्या प्रसादान्न गति कुतोऽपि यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्या प्रसादान्न गति कुतोऽपि ध्यायन् स्तुवं तस्य यशत्रिसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् स्त्रीसन्ध्यम् ध्यायन् स्तुवं तस्य यशस्त्रिसन्ध्यम् ध्यायन् स्तुवं तस्य यशस्त्रिसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् यशोदाभियो लोकलाघवमानम् परामृष्टमातुं ततो धृत्य गोप्या रुदन्तं मुहुर्नेत्रं युग्ममृजन्तं कराम्भोजयुग्मेन सातङ्कनेत्रम् मुहुश्वासकम्पात्रिरेखाङ्कघण्टा स्थितग्रीवं दामोदरं भक्तिवधम् मुहुश्वासकम्पात्रिरेखाङ्कघण्टा स्थितग्रीवं दामोदरं भक्तिवधम् इति दृक्स्वलीलाभिरानन्दकुण्डे स्वघोषं निमज्जन्तम् आख्यापयन्तम् तदीयेषितज्ञेषु भक्तैर्जितत्वं पुनः प्रेमतस्तं शतावृत्तिवन्दे तदीयेषितज्ञेषु भक्तैर्जितत्वं पुनः प्रेमतस्तं शतावृत्तिवन्दे वरां देवमोक्षं न मोक्षवदिं वा न चान्यां वृणेऽहं वरेशादपीह इदं ते वपुनाथ गोपाल सदा मे मनस्या विरास्तां किमन्ये इदं ते मुखाम्बोजम् अत्यन्तनीलैर्वृतं कुन्तलैः स्निग्धरक्तैश्च गोप्या मुहुश्चुम्बितं बिम्बरक्ताधरं मे मनस्या विरास्ताम् अलं लक्ष्यलाभैः नमो देव दामोदरानन्द विष्णु प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालाभिमग्नम् कृपादृष्टिवृष्ठ्यते दिनं बतानो गृहाणि क्षमामाज्ञां मेऽध्यक्षिदृश्यः कुबेरात्मजो बद्धमूर्त्यैव यद्वा त्वया मोचितो भक्तिभाजो कृतौ कुबेरात्मजो बद्धमूर्त्यैव यद्वा त्वया मोचितो भक्ति भाजो कृतौ च तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकाम्य प्रयच्छ न मोक्षे ग्रहो मे दामोदरे नमस्ते स्तुदाम्ने स्फुरदीप्तिधाम्ने त्वदीयोदरायाथ विश्वस्य धाम्ने नमो राधिकाये त्वदीयप्रियाये नमो अनन्तलीला देवाय तुभ्यम् नमो राधिकाये त्वदीयप्रियाये नमो अनन्तलीलाय देवाय तुभ्यम् Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe. Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jai Gauranitai. Jaya Gauranitai, Jai Gauranitai, Jai Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol.
जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र सरशिशिमाद इस्कॉन प्रतिष्ठा विभूति सांस्तपकाचार्य वैष्णव श्रमणि गौर प्रियजन कृष्ण प्रेम भक्तिदात पतित पावन हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरण भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद जी की जय। श्री गौर्य गुरु वर्ग पतित उद्धार की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास गुण सतगुरु स्वामी प्रभु की जय। नामाचार्य शील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। नान्त कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद सदैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जना का प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मान गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावरनाय अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहद मितांग ट्रांसडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। शिशु राधा कृष्ण गोप राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। रेलो शिवराज नीलमाधव की जय। श्रीमय पूर्णवद्वीप के चक्रधाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुरसंचाक भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर श्रृंगरे भगवान की जय। गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। बोलो श्री मथुरा रानी की समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glories to the Son of the body. All glories to the Son of the body. All glories to the Son of the body. All glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga.
हिरण्यकशिपूर्वक्षः अश्लीलटनकानकालये तो नशिमा परतो नशिमा जतो एतो यामि ततो नशिमा हरे नशिमा हृदये नशिमा नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तब कर कमल वरे नाका अद्भुत सिंह दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्ग वृषभदृत नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय भक्त विनोद भगवान की जय भक्त प्रहलाद महाराज की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai We sang already. We don't give everybody a chance to sing. If you can't sing, your husband will sing, right? If you can't sing, your husband can sing. Namo
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Kani kani sa pa pa ni Rama kari kani sa kani kani prana santi radakina pari pari
Jnani kani cha papani Brahmatyadikani cha Tani tani pranashanti Pradakshina pade pade
Kani kani sa pa pa ni Rama kari kani sa kani kani prana santi radakina pari pari
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Krishna Maharani, Jaya Krishna Maharani, Jaya Krishna Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Vrinda, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol,
Hari Bol,
Hari Bol,
Hari
Nitai
Bol.
Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradideve Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradideve Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Brindai tulasi devai priyai kesava satya Krishna bhakti prade devi sattvatai namo namah. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire that you also grant me a residence, pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavi damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love, Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki jai. Cheto Darpanamajanam Bhavamahadavagni Nivapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Hariparam Puna Vridaswadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudhari Sarva Shakti Tatrapita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Ita Dishita Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavata Bhakti Rahaitu Kitwai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Pritamam Visame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Chintaya Yanam Galora Shudhaya Padanam Gade Gadarudaya Gira Pulakai Chitam Papu Kada Tamanama Grahane Bhavisati Yogaitam Nimishena Chakishakruvusaitam Shunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahiname Masleshava Padaratam Pinashtamam Adarshanam Mahatam Karotuva Bhadramataspi Saivana Paraha Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Guru Tishenama Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shmati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunavadi Vasatari Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of usual birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which all is anxious. Oh my Lord. Huh? Yeah, but sing prayer. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction for living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental energies. They're not even hard and fast through for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and strolling street, one should be more turned than the tree. Devoid of all sense of false prestige. One should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause that devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharajnanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some rather I'm falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so. Even if I'm roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kristakam Ki Jai. The 18 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided, they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme his devotees to dedicate your life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names the demigods, the Lord Shiva or Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities offered in Vedas as spiritual activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fearless person about the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas to worship the Lord. They are just like desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. Jai Bancha, Kalpatarubhascha, Kripasindhu Devacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Jai Ananta Kuti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai.
Vishtam Savitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatahapachikaman Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pradan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sa Nama Om Raya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Saraswati Adesatarine Namo Upadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Itinamine Shri Vasavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Guru Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Guruvani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Guru Kishoraya Shakshadvaraya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambhude Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhaktivinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Baba Bhumestwam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Shri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurichuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Kam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Chayatam Suratur Bangur Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bhujo Radha Madana Mohano Divyadvindaranya Kalpratumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Brastali Vi Sevyamana Smarami Shiman Rasarasa Rambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gulbhir Gulbinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishvara Nanda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Riksha Laksha Vrite Susurabi Rabipali Antam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrama Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kwananda Madhavinda Dalayataksam Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpa Kotika Maniya Vishesha Sobam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamaya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Pantika Yanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabham Alulabhapabhakto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragam Yovayura Tapi Manaso Munipungamana Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichinti Tatve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Koti Gashtakti Rasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Baba Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratisai Substanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Pratibhavita Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Navasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochane Santaksa Deva Hidesa Vilokayanti Yam Sham Sundaram Achinti Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatista Nana Avatara Makarod Bhuvanesha Kintu Krishna Swayam Sambhavat Paramampamam Yo Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Asya Prabha Pavavato Jagannath Koti Jyotish Vasesha Vasadadi Vibhuti Bena Tad Brahman Iskalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ayahi Asya Jagadanda Satani Sute Traigunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitayamano Sadva Bulambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Yaprani Nam Pratifilam Smaratam Upetya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijatamni Talecha Tasya Devi Maheswari Dama Satesitesh Tete Prabhavini Chaya Vitascha Yena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shistista Tepalaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Sesta Sesa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Adadi Vikara Viseshi Yoga Sanjaya Tena Hitata Putakasti Hitu Yasambhutima Karya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Departure Hita Santanamabhyupetya Dipayate Vivita Hita Samana Dharma Yasdadra Geva Hitcha Vishnu Tayavibhate Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidrama Nanta Jagadana Sarova Kupa Adhara Sakti Mavalambya Param Swamurtim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Valambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnur Mahansla Yasakalabi Sesho Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Basman Yatasma Sakalishna Jesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayata Pitadvadatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dwande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamambu Maruddi Sascha Galastatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesu Teja Yasyaga Yabramati Sambrata Kalachakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayastapam Se Brahma Dikita Patakava Testa Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakatapa Bhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandana Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Tuchabhakti Bhaja Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yam Kroda Kama Saja Pranayadi Biti Vatsalya Moha Guru Goro Vasevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purisha Kalpataravo Dramabu Mishchitamane Ganamai Jayamamritam Kataganam Nadyam Gamanama Pivam Sipriyasaki Chiranandam Jyoti Parama Pitata Swadyam Apichasayatra Sirade Bihisravadi Siravi Vyasta Suma Nimesa Dakyuva Vajitina Hea Tripisamaye Bhaje Svitati Tamaham Iha Golakamityam Vedanta Ste Santakshati Charakatipa Yeshi Guru Vastika prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing a blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance not the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual masters always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. Over my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship. Shri Radha and Krishna is also engaged his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and in ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied to offer my humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conscious pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he's expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different tastes arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. For my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, 1 second. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, verse number 7. Savai Vishwasrijam Garbo Deva Karmatma Saktimam Vibhabhajat Manatmanam Ekada Dasada Trida Sa, that, by, certainly, Visrashijam, of the gigantic Virat form. Garbha, total energy. Deva, living energy. Karma, activity of life. Atma, self. Shaktiman, full with potencies. Vibhaja, divided. Atmana, by himself. Atmanam, himself. Ikada, in oneness. Dasa da, in 10. Trida, and in 3. Translation by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Purport, the total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Consciousness is the sign of the living entity or the soul. The existence of the soul is manifest in the form of consciousness called Jnana Shakti. The total consciousness is that of the gigantic Virat Rupa, and the same consciousness is exhibited in individual persons. The activity of consciousness is performed through the air of life, which is of 10 divisions. The airs of life are called prana, apana, udana, vyana, and samana, and are also differently qualified as naga, kurma, krikara, devadatta, and dhananjaya. The consciousness of the soul becomes polluted by the material atmosphere, and thus various activities are exhibited in the false ego of bodily identification. These various activities are described in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 41st verse, as Bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayovya vasayanam. The conditioned soul is bewildered into various activities for want of pure consciousness. In pure consciousness, the activity is one. The consciousness of the individual soul becomes one with the supreme consciousness when there is complete synthesis between the two. The monist believes that there is only one consciousness, whereas the sattvatas, or the devotees, believe although there is undoubtedly one consciousness, they are one because there is agreement. The individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness as instructed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1866. Sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam saranam braja. The individual consciousness, Arjuna, is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness and thus maintain his conscious purity. It is foolish to try to stop the activities of consciousness, but they can be purified when they are dovetailed with the Supreme. This consciousness is divided into 3 modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Adhyatmika, or self-identification with the body and mind. Adhibhotika, or self-identification with the material products. And Adhidaivika, or self-identification as a servant of the Lord. Of the 3, Adhidaivika, self-identification, is the beginning of purity of consciousness in pursuance of the desire of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virata Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now this is an extremely profound verse and purport, and it requires some careful thought. It is part of the explanation of how the material universe is created. And now we're going into deep detail about how it actually happens and why there are conditioned living entities and how people can get out of that conditioning. And the key phrase here is, or key word is dovetailing. We have to learn to dovetail our desires and activities with that of the Lord. Now, dovetailing means a female and male, what you would call forms, connect or joint, develop a joint. So previously, they didn't use nails and screws to make things. They made the dovetail, female and male connection. So it's very interesting. You don't need nails, you don't need screws. You just have to know how to dovetail things. So a female, let's call it a tail, is something that's cut into the wood, and the male dove is put into it. Not directly like this, but pushed into it. So that creates a bind. And they used to make all furnitures like that. They didn't use nails and screws like we do today. Did you know that, probably? Huh? Okay.
In India, I had seen.
Yeah.
When there's especially some big beams they got to connect,
Yeah.
they do the dovetail and then they just send a
Bang it in. Yeah.
wooden peg and then it stops.
Right. Yeah, and it's very, very, workable. I mean, it works. Right. Okay. So this is the key word. How? See now, Prabhupada here is going to explaining the complete difference between the Mayavadi's false narrative and the Sattvatas, or the devotees' correct narrative of oneness. This is the big question. What did they mean by oneness? Well, the Mayavadis have got it all wrong. They mean Atma becomes Paramatma, right? But the Sattvatas say the Atma purifies its desires and becomes one with the Lord by having the desire to please the Lord's desire. There's a major difference between the Mayavadi's concept of oneness and the devotee's concept of oneness. And these are things that we have to carefully understand. Otherwise, we'll never be able to convince anyone of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Because if we don't understand it ourselves, how are we going to convince someone else, right? So what happens is the Mayavadis are expert at clouding up or hazing up the discourse. And that is because of the material atmosphere. Now, when Prabhupada mentions the material atmosphere, it's very important because in order to come to the material world, you have to have a hazy consciousness. Hazy means what we're seeing today, and every day in the last couple of weeks, right? The atmosphere is hazy because there's billions of particles of carbon, smoke, carbonized smoke in the air. So the air is not pure, it's contaminated, right? And when you breathe it in with your mouth instead of your nose, your lungs it's like smoking a cigarette, basically. Your lungs become contaminated also. So you have to be very careful. That's why you don't need a mask to avoid COVID. You need a mask to avoid this air, right? But the mask is natural if you breathe through your nose, because your nose, and in different parts of the body, your body every day makes at least 1.5 quarts of mucus. Now that mucus protects different parts of your body. Now, number one, the sinuses. That mucus will catch the air particles in the air, and holds them in the nose. And then we blow your nose, they come out. But if you breathe through your mouth, all that goes right into your lungs and your esophagus, right? All the junk that's in the air. So, in order to become conditioned by material nature, you have to have foggy or dust contaminated, hazy understanding of things. Haze is when you can't see. You can't see. It's daytime, the sun is shining, but you can't really see. It looks foggy, right? It's not fog. It's particles, right? So we become contaminated by the material air and the material atmosphere. Therefore, we don't see things clearly. We don't understand things clearly. And we end up believing things that are not true and have never been true. An illusion is something that was never true, but we believe it's true. So the number one illusion is, I am this material body. It was never true that I was the body. But that's what the definition of an illusion is. It's something that was never true, but we believe it's true. See? So if we understand that, and we understand what is the number one illusion, and that is, I identify with the body rather than identifying with the soul, we can begin our spiritual life. But until we realize that, there's no way we're going to understand anything about Krishna consciousness. So that's why this material education is extremely, extremely dangerous, because what's the first thing they teach you? I am this body. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, right? As soon as and that's the same thing as the RSS. They pledge allegiance to Vande Mataram, the Mother Nature, or they pledge allegiance to the flag of Bharat, or not Bharat, but India. So as soon as you pledge allegiance to the flag, you pledge allegiance to a government, you're identifying with the body. Now, am I against pledging allegiance to the United States? I'm not against being a good citizen of the United States, but I only pledge allegiance to Krishna, not to anything else. How can you pledge? Look at the phrase, pledge allegiance. That means whatever they say, you follow it. That's what it means. Right? So I can't pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, but I can pledge allegiance to Krishna. But that's dovetailing ourselves to Krishna's desires. We agree to follow Krishna's desires. That's what allegiance. Look up the word allegiance. Let's see exactly what it means, because it's a very important word.
It says it's a loyalty or commitment of a subordinate to a superior, or of an individual to a group or cause.
Yeah, see? So if you pledge allegiance to Vande Mataram, you see, which by the way, the Muslims didn't do it. They rejected it, right? But if you pledge allegiance to Vande Mataram, not that there's something wrong with Bhumi Devi, that's who they're talking about. There's nothing wrong with Bhumi Devi, but the way they do it is identifying with the body. And that's why the Muslims refused, because they only pledge allegiance to Allah. They don't pledge allegiance to Vande Mataram, right? So, in a sense, they had it. The Muslims had it right, for the wrong reason, of course, but they had it right. So, we should only pledge allegiance to Krishna, and that means we're loyal. We follow what he says, right? And everything is confusing. Everything is confused in the material world. So now let's go deeply into what this purport is saying, because it's extremely profound. The verse says, the total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa. Right there, as soon as it says, in the form of, that means that nothing is impersonal. either in the spiritual world or the material world. People who interpret things as being impersonal. So the material world is not one gigantic impersonal collection of atoms or molecules or elements or chemicals. Everything is personal. Okay, so therefore the Virat Rupa is a person. It's a temporary manifestation of Krishna that encompasses everything. Okay? So if Einstein was going to make the unified field theory, the reason he wasn't able to do it, because he didn't study Virat Rupa, that's why. He didn't accept that there was such a thing. You know? Therefore, he was not able to find the one equation that explains everything in the material universe, in everything in reality. Let's put it like that. Okay, so it says the total energy of the Mahatattva. So the Mahatattva is the sum total of all material elements. There's the Pradhana and the Mahatattva. The Pradhana is the potential form or the potential state of matter. And the Mahatattva is the manifested state of all elements. So it goes from the subtle, everything always goes from the subtle to the gross, right? So for example, someone has an idea in their mind. If I buy junk candy from China for 20 cents a pound and sell it for $20 a pound, I'm going to become a millionaire. That is a thought, right? And they research and they say, yeah, China is selling junk candy for 20 cents a pound. So then you have to calculate, buying it and then shipping it and then going through customs. So, you do all that and it only costs 45 cents. And I'm going to sell it for $20 a pound. So I'm going to make $1 million, right? So this is a thought. It's a subtle thing, right? But now you go from the thought to the action to make it happen. So you have to act to make it happen. Krishna doesn't have to act to make anything happen. So he just thinks about it, immediately it happens. That's why he's God. But we have to think about it, and then we have to make it happen. And but it begins with a thought. A thought is a subtle thing. It doesn't have any. You can't measure the thought in the sense of how much does it weigh, how big is it, the length, the breadth, the width. So it doesn't have any of those things, right? It's just a subtle thing. But then you make it real by acting on it. So everything begins from the subtle and goes to the gross. So here it says, in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa, divided himself by himself. Why does he say that? Because nothing can happen without Krishna. So if he's going to divide himself, he's the one that's doing it. That's why he divides himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities. And that is a huge, profound statement to try and understand it. Let's put it like this. We're not going to understand everything. Let's get it straight. There are mysterious things. We can't understand everything, but we can get a general gist of it, right? So Krishna can divide himself, right? Nobody else can divide Krishna. And even though he's divided, he's still complete, right? Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. The Supreme, Absolute, Truth, Personality, God is perfect and complete. And because he is perfect and complete, everything that emanates from him is also perfect and complete. And even though billions and trillions of things are emanating from him that are perfect and complete, he still remains perfect and complete. Now you try and understand that. Basically he's saying 1 + 1 = 1 and 1 - 1 = 1. This is math in the spiritual world. It's not math in the material world, but it's spiritual math. So therefore, Krishna, even though he's perfect and complete, he's never diminished. But the Mayavadis say, if you say that this material world is a expansion of the Lord. Well, that means the Lord no longer exists, because if he keeps expanding, then he diminishes. No, sorry, that's the wrong understanding. He can expand himself infinitely and never be one iota less than who he is. That's what this verse, Om Purnam Adahab Purnamidam, says. It's the invocation verse of the Sri Ishopanishad. Okay, so it says here, the total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities. Now, what does that mean exactly? Into the consciousness of the living entities. We have to read the purport to understand it, and we will in a second. Let's leave that as an open question. As the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Okay, so he divides himself into the consciousness of 1, the living entities, 2, the life of activity, and 3, self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Now let's remember that. Now we're going to read the purport. Consciousness is the sign of the living entity or the soul. The existence of the soul is manifest in the form of consciousness. Now, if you look up consciousness, it means awareness, right? Let's look it up. Let's be sure about that. It means you become aware of things. Just like in the beginning, a child is identified as anamoya. He's aware of his mother's nipple, and by sucking on his mother's nipple, he gets nourishment that he needs, and he instinctively does it, right? He instinctively does it. And for him, that nourishment, that is his conception, first conception of God. Go ahead. What does it say?
Yeah, it's awareness. Another definition is the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings.
Right. So that's what consciousness is. So Krishna, or Virat, in the form of Virat Rupa, he self-divides himself into the consciousness of the living entities. He enters into us, not only in the form of, as a partial part of Virat Rupa, but also as Paramatma. So he is everywhere, right? As Virat Rupa, and now, and also as Paramatma, and also as Brahman, effulgence, because Brahman effulgence is the substratum of the whole spiritual world and the material world, right? So you cannot be independent of Krishna. He is present in all these different ways, everywhere. Or we cannot be independent of Krishna. And it says, consciousness is the sign of the living entity or the soul. The existence of the soul is manifest in the form of consciousness. Now, have you ever heard of the consciousness having form? Say, look up the word form. Let's see what it means. What's it say?
It's either shape or body, the visible shape or configuration of something, a particular way in which a thing exists or appears or manifests.
Yeah. So he appears, or he divides. The existence of the soul is manifest in the form of consciousness called Jnana Shakti, the power of jnana, knowledge, awareness, you see. And that's exactly how you could describe Einstein. He never did any research. He just depended on the research of others and gave it a different interpretation. Or he as you can say, he tweaked it, right? He's a tweaker, right? But a very smart tweaker. So Does that mean everything he did is true? No. But he was able to outsmart everyone else. That's what a CEO does. He has to outsmart all his workers to control them so that he can make a profit off of them. Did you know that? He's got to be a dominator. He's a dominator. He knows how to outsmart his workers. That's what a CEO is. Like you. So Einstein was the CEO of a whole generation of people. He befooled them with his different statements and papers and things like that. Is everything he said true? No, not at all. In fact, a lot of it is false, but it looked like it was true, and it looked like it works. By the way, there's a lot of doubt about his validation of his theories. The main thing was in the 1930s, this English guy goes to either South America or South Africa, and South America, and he witnesses a eclipse of the sun, and he claims that a prediction that that Einstein made about light being bent, right? He measured it and said Einstein's prediction was true, and that's how he became famous. Now, how do we know what that guy did in South America is true or false? We don't know. He just said I prove. I'm giving the proof that Einstein's prediction is true. How do you know it's true? We don't know. I mean, you're not going to double check it, are you? Right? And that's how the guy got famous. Okay? It's just like Sai Baba. He got famous because they made a movie about him. How do we know if the movie is true or not? Right? They made all these claims in the movie. And nowadays, Sai Baba is more famous than Krishna now in India. Everyone's, they have, maybe they have Durga, or they have Krishna, or they have Vishnu, or they have Lakshmi, but they also have Sai Baba on their altar. How the hell did he get on the altar, right? Because of a Bollywood movie. Is that true or false? What do you think? It's propaganda, yeah. So this is crazy. But yet, this is the contaminated consciousness of the people, the material atmosphere. It's contaminated. Just like now we're seeing this air quality is contaminated, right? But that's not the real contamination. The real contamination is all these false ideas and concepts and half-truths that are contaminating people's minds. Right? So it says here, the total consciousness is that of the gigantic Virat Rupa, and the same consciousness is exhibited in individual persons. Huh?
That is the oneness.
Yeah. The activity of consciousness is performed through the air of life, which is of 10 divisions. The airs of life are called prana, apana, udana, vyana, and samana. That this is what the yogis are. This is their forte. This is like where they're really experts, in this, or of controlling the airs in the body, right? And basically, the Mayavadis are experts at this, controlling the airs. They talk about, all the yogis talk about this, the different airs, and they talk about chakra cleaning. Oh my God. You want to get your chakras clean? You have to pay for it, by the way. It's not free. You have to get your chakras clean. The chakras are the different places where the airs are moving up toward the cerebellum, the little hole in the cranium, right, through which the yogi can escape, and go travel around the universe and then come back again, Anyway, the whole thing is nonsense. No, but I can't say it's nonsense, but it's misinterpretation. Let's put it like that. Everything he's saying here is true, but it's in the way they misinterpret it. And then it says, and are differently qualified as Naga, Kurma, Krikara, Devadatta, and Dhananjaya. The consciousness of the soul becomes polluted in the material atmosphere. So why did he put that sentence after saying there's 10 kinds of air? Because it says here, the consciousness is performed through the air of life, which is of 10 divisions. Then he gives the names. Then he says, the consciousness of the soul becomes polluted by the material atmosphere, and thus various activities are exhibited in the false ego of the bodily identification. That is the real gist of this whole purport. This is why people are in illusion in the material world. They get polluted by this false consciousness, false ideas. The false ego creates false ideas and false interpretations of things, and this makes a living entity bound by the laws of material nature. So, this is called basically the material conception of life, which is the polluted air of the material world, the material conception of life. And he's going to mention that now. He says, the various activities are exhibited in the false ego of bodily identification. These various activities are described in Bhagavad Gita 2.41 as Bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayanam. The conditioned soul is bewildered into the various activities for want of pure consciousness. In other words, for lack of pure consciousness. In pure consciousness, the activity is one. Yeah, service to Krishna. The consciousness of the individual soul becomes one with the supreme consciousness when there is complete synthesis between the two. Synthesis means there's a joining. They're joined together. Right? The monist believes that there is only one consciousness, whereas the sattvatas, or the devotees, believe that although there is undoubtedly one consciousness, they are one because there is agreement. So when we agree to follow Krishna, that's what Arjuna says. Nasti mohas mitirvlat tat prasadat mayuchita stitosmi gata sandeya karishye vachanam tava. Krishna, whatever you say, that's what I'm going to do. Karishye vachanam tava. Because now you have eliminated my moha, this cloudy, hazy consciousness of the material atmosphere. Now you purified it. You got rid of all the particles and all the nonsense philosophies and all the nonsense phony thoughts and ideas and theories, right? There are billions of theories of the scientists. Most of them are all false. Right? So you got rid of all this. Krishna, this is your best prasadam. See, he says, Nasti mahasmitir labla tat prasadat mayuchita. Oh, Achyuta, this is your best prasad. You got rid of all my false ideas in my consciousness. Now I know who I am. I'm your eternal servant. And now I'm going to engage in your eternal service. I'm dovetailed with you. This is the synthesis. My soul still exists. I'm still an individual and you're an individual. But I agree with you on every point. Now I pledge allegiance to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, that I will be always loyal to him. Say, now you can pledge allegiance. Now you know who to pledge allegiance to. You say. So then it says, the individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness as instructed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1866. Sarvadharmam purityaja mam ekam saranam praja. The individual consciousness, Arjuna, is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness, meaning Krishna, and thus maintain his conscious purity. That should be our goal, to maintain our conscious purity. See, now we know the words to use to preach effectively. We have to maintain our conscious purity. Our consciousness is contaminated right now by the material atmosphere. And now he's going to say, it is foolish to try and stop the activities of consciousness, but they can be purified when they are dovetailed with the Supreme. That consciousness is divided into three modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Adhyatmika, or self-identification with the body and mind. Adibhotika, or self-identification with the material products. And Adidaivika, or self-identification as a servant of the Lord. Of the three, Adidaivika, self-identification, is the beginning of purity of consciousness in pursuance of the desire of the Lord. Prabhupada carefully chose every word of this purport, and he got it exactly right. He got it exactly right. No one else can explain like Einstein didn't explain anything. He just confused people, right? Schopenhauer didn't explain anything. He just confused people. Spinoza didn't explain anything. Nietzsche didn't explain anything. Even Socrates didn't explain anything. He said the whole spiritual world is static. What? It's not static. It's dynamic. You know. So all these guys got it wrong, and people, they want to get a PhD in philosophy. They study all the wrong theories of speculator philosophers. No wonder they get confused, right? If you ask them a direct question, what is the goal of life? They say, well, Spinoza said this, and Kant said that. And of course, Schopenhauer said something different than both of them. And then comes Camus. He said something. He said it's all ridiculous and it's all insane. And I think I go along with Camus.
And then follow your passion.
Yeah, to follow whatever you think. You know, you create your own reality. You buy the metaverse latest version of the binoculars or whatever they are, and you can make your own reality, anything you want. You know, this is nonsense. This is crazy. This is Looney Tunes, right? People are living in a hazy illusion of false ideas, right? So he says here that, now let's go to 241. 241. Vyavasatmika Buddhir Ekaha Kurunandana Bahusaka Inantascha Buddhayo Vyavasayanam. Those who are on the path of those who are on this path are resolute in purpose. Very nice phrase, resolute in purpose. They're completely convinced. They know what the real purpose of life is. It's not to become a billionaire. Definitely not that, right? It's not to become a big gangbanger. No, if you know what that word means. I'm not going to explain it because I would say something illicit here. It's not to become a basketball player that puts a little ball in a hoop, right? What do? How come they make millions of dollars? By the way, what's his name? Is the first billionaire basketball player? Huh? Who?
Michael Jordan.
No. Hey, he's a millionaire. He's not a billionaire.
No, billionaire.
Yeah. Who?
Shaquille O'Neal.
No. What did you say?
LeBron James.
I think so. I think it's him. He's really big and he's really ugly. You know. Anyway, he's a billionaire. What's he do? He puts a ball in a hoop. That's it. He doesn't have any knowledge of anything except you put a ball in a hoop. What's his name?
LeBron James.
Yeah, he's a billionaire, right? The first billionaire basketball player. You see how stupid Americans are? They spend money to watch this big guy put a ball in a hoop, right? And they think that, oh man, this is exciting, you know. It's very crazy. Okay, so it says here.
Most of the times they make money not in the game.
What's that?
Most of the times they don't make the most of the money not in the game. It's the advertisements.
Oh yeah,
and
the
business
advertisements and
and
everything
the,
else. Yeah.
in the apparels and business.
Okay, so it says, a strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasatmika intelligence. Okay, Vyavasatmika means resolute, absolutely sure, there's no doubt. Krishna is Supreme Personality Godhead. This is what we have to teach our kids. Unless they learn without any doubt that Krishna is the Supreme Person. And you have to give them knowledge and validation of how that's true, right? Not that, oh, we think that it may be something like this. No, there's no I think it may be something like this. I know 100% sure Krishna is the Supreme Personality of the Godhead. And Sarvadharmam Parityaja, Mamekam Saranam Vaja. I shouldn't worship anybody else but Krishna. Right? Mamekam means only. Yeah, Ekam, one, right? So it's just like the Muslims say, Wahad Allah. There's only one God, right? But Mamekam is stronger than Wahad Allah. He said, only Krishna and nobody else you should worship, right? Okay, so we have our own Wahad Allah. So faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. That means you can't see it, but you know for sure it exists. It's like, I can't see the electromagnetic waves, but I know it exists because I got my cell phone, and it picks it up, see? So I can't see it, but I know it exists. So now, I can't see Krishna exactly, but I know it exists because all the acharyas have confirmed it, and I'm seeing him every day in the form of either Virat Rupa or in the form of the deity, right? Deity is like Virat Rupa, made of material elements, but non-different than the Lord, right? Now, if you put up, if you take out the Radha Krishna and put the Sai Baba, then that is material, right? But if you put Radha and Krishna according to the way they're described in the Vedas, and with the Pran Pratishta ceremony, then they are non-different than Krishna. Okay, so then faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. When one is engaged in the duties of Krishna consciousness, he need not act in relationship to the material world with obligations to family traditions. Now, it doesn't say obligations to family. Family tradition. Like my family tradition, I'm going to tell you right now, it was to eat chicken, a roasted chicken every Sunday and drink. I had to drink whiskey. My father didn't give me a big tumbler. It's called a tumbler of whiskey. He gave me just a little bit. He said, "You have to drink this to be a man." And I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it, but he forced me to do it. So I went along with it because I didn't know any better then, right? So that was our family tradition. That was a family tradition. Just like one time, there was a wedding. It's a long time ago, and right before the wedding started, the priest was there, the relatives were there, the father and mother there. A bird fell down and died. Like that. And the godfather, the grandfather said, "Stop!" And he slowly walked toward the bird. Took his hat off. He had a hat. Right? Took his hat off. And very slowly he put it on top of the bird. And then he put his arms over it. Now you can do the marriage. So when the bride and groom got married, later on they had kids. And their kids grew up, and they were going to have a marriage. So they contacted the priest. He said, "Okay." And the priest said, "Well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." And then the son of the grandfather, he said, "Oh, but we have to have the bird ceremony also." He said, "What?" So we have to have the bird ceremony. He said, "What's the bird ceremony?" He said, "We have to throw a bird down, and it has to die, and then I have to walk with my hat on slowly toward the bird, and I have to put my hat on top of the bird, then I have to raise my hands and say, 'Now proceed.'" Now, this is called a family tradition, right? So this is nonsense, right? But no, there's so many things like this. My family had a tradition: a chicken every Sunday and a little tumbler of whiskey. And some other family has another tradition. Every family has their own traditions. So it says it's not that we are against family, but we're against these false family traditions. So someone will read this, oh, you see, the Hare Krishnas, they are against family. No, we're not against family. What are you talking about? It's just family traditions. It's not the family. Yes, the nonsense things that families do, right? Okay, so then it says, fruitive activities are the engagement of one's reactions from past good or bad deeds. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, family traditions, humanity or nationality. So exactly, nationality. And when it says humanity, what does that mean? Well, we see that all the time. Like when you see the Ukrainians, before the war started, they showed this video in Ukraine, and they had these absolute fanatics saying, Ukraine, Ukraine, we hate the Russians, Ukraine. And they were all crying out, Ukraine, Ukraine, you know. So that's the beginning of the war right there, right? It's called this humanity is identifying itself with the body, right? And then the actual false identification is called nationality. Now, how many nations are there in the world? Prabhupada says the United Nations started with so many flags, and every year they'll be adding new flags, right? They're new nations, right? like Czechoslovakia broke into two different flags, two different countries, and then Yugoslavia broke into I don't know how many of these, like 4 or 5, right? So there used to be one flag for Yugoslavia. Now there's 4 or 5 flags, which used to be Yugoslavia. So the United Nations just increasing the flags. Prabhupada said. Huh?
United Nations mission failed.
Yeah, they're supposed to unite. They're just dividing more and more. Prabhupada said, there's a purport where he says, Kali Yuga will be so bad that every house will have its own flag, its own stamps, and its own taxes. Every house. That's how bad it's going to get. Did you ever hear that before? Yeah. Yeah. Huh?
I heard that's towards the end of Kali Yuga.
Let's hope so, yeah. Well, look, India had it almost during the Muslims. There were different kings, right? And every time you went from the territory of one king to the other, you had to pay tax. If you wanted to go from Orissa to Vrindavan, you'd have to pay by the roads. You'd have to pay many times, because you're passing from one country to another, one king to another. It was already there for 800 years in India, right?
Now also there, you have to pay different taxes. You enter the Bombay,
Yeah.
and from the rest of the Thane or the, you have to pay state tax. So that the taxes changes.
So you pay it right away, or
Right away on the
Now
border.
they changed it.
On the
Now
border
it's
itself.
they came up with the GST unified,
come up
so you don't have to do all this now.
But
One tax
because
you
they-
pay
to who?
to the
government.
You one tax you pay to the central government, and then government distributes to all the states.
But
Earlier it was there.
what is the tax? Your ability to travel within the country?
Yeah, when you're goods transportation.
What
Goods.
Oh, goods. Oh,
Yeah,
good. That's commerce. But how about people?
No, people, they have to pay tolls, but not the, tolls is different thing, right? You have to go from using highway, here also they have tolls, right?
Oh, yeah. No, okay. No, but in India, you went from Orissa, let's say, to Bihar, you had to pay a tax. You could, otherwise you can't go through Bihar. No, I'm just saying Bihar, but there were kingdoms. There were many different kingdoms, and well, that's why Lord Chaitanya, because everywhere he went, huge crowds would follow him, and it was very dangerous because the Muslims saw that they would try and kill him, right? So it was suggested to him, don't take the roads, go through the jungle. Because jungle, nobody's there. They don't see you crossing the boundaries. So he went through the Jharkhand jungle, which is huge, right? It's still there today. And it's where all the dacoits and the communists and other people live. You know, it's very dangerous to walk through those jungles, not only because there's wild animals, but because there's a lot of dacoits. Anyway, he went through the jungle, but he went through the jungle to save the animals. And he was chanting, and the animals started chanting with him and dancing in ecstasy, right? That's another story. All right. So here it says, fruitive activities are the engagement of one's reactions. I'm going to finish in a few seconds. One's reactions from past good or bad deeds. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. If you were there yesterday in a class, remember I told those kids, good and bad activities are actually bad. And, you know, everyone was looking at me like, hey, what's he saying here? You know, good activities are bad. You know. Well, no, now listen to what Prabhupada says. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to dualities like good and bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. What is that material conception of life? Well, it's called the MCL, the material conception of life. Is an illusory set of beliefs that keep people bound up in the cycle of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. It is taught in modern schools to unwitting children so that they will grow up to be exploited throughout life as consumers of myriad products that are, for the most part, not necessary. People waste their money, time, energy, and well-being buying these products which distract their time and attention from self-realization and God realization. Atheistic humanism, AH, pedagogy is the educational theory used in public schools. It denies belief in God or the supernatural being who is the creator and proprietor of everything, material and spiritual. Humanists believe that this life is the only life we have and rejects the existence of the eternal spiritual world. It is based on the belief that there is only matter and that knowledge is uniquely achieved by experience in the material world. AH, okay, now there's AI, IT, now there's AH also. AH claims human beings are completely independent and self-reliant of any supernatural causes. The false concepts of AH inhibit people from achieving liberation from the cycle of birth and death. The following false concepts are the basis of the MCL, material conception of life, and the AH, the atheistic humanism. 1. There is no scientific validation that God exists. One can only understand the truth by experimental science, logic, reason, and empiricism, or the theory that all knowledge is derived from sense experience. That's 1. Okay, now there's a whole list. I'm not going to go through it now. This is the next panel, right? So let's finish this purport because there's something very important there. Service in Krishna consciousness is how, let's see, the material conception of life. This state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness, that is, above good and bad. Because why is good and bad both bad? Because if you do mundane good things, there's a difference between mundane good and spiritual good. Mundane good acts means that you're still under the laws of karma and you have to take birth to get those good results. Therefore, it's bad. But it's much better than bad acts. It's still much better than bad. We're not saying don't do any good acts. We're saying, but you have good acts with a material desire for a return of something in recompense for the good act. that is still material, and that'll still keep you in the material world, right? In the cycle of birth and death. So, what is good? Transcendental goodness. There is sattva and Suddha sattva. So we're interested in Krishna consciousness, Suddha sattva, where there's no good or bad, there's only pure acts of devotion for Krishna. Okay? So the resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge. Vasudeva Savamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. What does it mean, based on knowledge? Like one time, there was a man, and he was poor, and he was not some big sadhu. He was a cobbler, right? Cobblers are considered very low-class people, right? And he would do his work under a banyan tree, and he had a little hut that he lived in, right? So one day, Narada Muni comes and sees him. And the man, gave his obeisance to him right away. And he wasn't rich, so he only had some water, but he offered it to him and a seat, And Narada Muni told him, I'm going to see Narayana. He said, oh, you're going to see my Lord? He said, yes. Do you want me to say anything to him? He said, no. I'm just satisfied that you're going to see him. So then he went to see some big Brahmana, very famous Brahmana. And he told him that he was going to see the Lord. And the Brahmana said, oh, you're going to see the Lord, huh? Ask him how long I'll stay in the material world. I'm sure it's only for this lifetime, So Narada said, okay, I'll do that. So he goes to see Narayana. And after his darshan and long discussion, she said, oh, by the way, there's one cobbler and there's one Brahmana. The Brahmana wants to know how long he has to stay in the material world. He thinks this is his last lifetime. And Narayana smiled and said, nope. He's going to be around many, many more lifetimes. He said, really? Well, what about the cobbler? He said, the cobbler is coming back to me in this lifetime. Really? He said, yes. So he goes back. He tells the Brahmana that, no, you're not going back this lifetime. In fact, Narayan was not able to calculate how many times you're going to take birth again. He said, what? Now I know you're a liar. And you did not see Narayan. He started insulting Narada Muni. Then Narada Muni immediately understood why this guy is going to stick around till the end. And there's no end. So then he goes and sees the cobbler. And the cobbler said, he bows down to him. And he said, did you see my Lord? He said, yeah. Do you want to know what he said about you? He said, no, it doesn't matter. I'm just happy that you saw the Lord. I have so much love for him. He said, no, I want to tell you. The Lord said, this is your last birth in the material world. He said, no, I don't deserve it. He said, no, look, what do you mean you don't deserve it? How come you believe what I say? He said, how come I believe what you say? Well, look, I do my work under this banyan tree. He said, yes. Oh, by the way, when he told the Brahmana that he's not going to go back to Godhead, Narayana had told him, if he asks you what I was doing when he told you that, tell him I was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. So when he told that to the Brahmana said, now I know you're a liar. You're just phony, and insulted him, right? Not only that he wasn't going to go back in this lifetime, but, when he said, he was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. So when he sees the cobbler, he says, and the cobbler asked him, what was my Lord doing? And he said, he was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. He says, yeah, it's nothing for him. So, and Narada Muni was a little, surprised. So why do you say that? He said, well, look, I work under this banyan tree. And once a year, the seed pods of the banyan tree fall down, and they open up, and I see the seeds. And he said, the seeds are small like this, but yet, in every one of those small seeds, my Lord puts a gigantic banyan tree. So it's no problem for him to put an elephant through the eye of a needle. Narada Muni was like impressed. I said, this guy really knows what he's talking about. You know, he's a scientist. He understands God just by looking at nature carefully, right? And he has full faith, and it's based on knowledge. It's not based on theory or guessing or speculation. He has knowledge. He sees that God puts a gigantic tree in a little seed like that. Therefore, it's not difficult for God to put an elephant through the eye of a needle. This is knowledge. This is proof that God exists, right? Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. There's a lot more. I'm going to have to finish it tomorrow. The real esoteric truth about this is going to come out tomorrow. So, Haribol, are there any questions?
Be here or nowhere.
Yeah, be here or be nowhere, right? Yes, you have a question?
Yes, Maharaj. So, I think this purport of we read just now for 241.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this it is mentioned that our relationship to the material world with obligation to family, traditions, humanity, and nationality. So I mean, yeah, I totally agree and accept that. Okay, if the Krishna consciousness, I mean, everybody is doing. This is the ideal scenario that we don't need to have this kind of obligations to tradition, but to nationality. It comes naturally when certain group of people not in sync with the other, right? So some people are troublemaking, some people are good. So this comes naturally. For example, if Ukraine, or take example, Ukraine people assume everything is
What?
good. Ukrainians, let's
Ukrainians,
say, take
yeah.
example. So everybody is good, but Russian are troublemaker, let's say. So they have to come up with something like to protect themselves. So where it comes that feelings of nationality or something.
Well, the
It
Russians
happens
do
to
the
India
same.
also.
The Russians do the same thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not that only the Ukrainians are doing it.
No.
The Russians are doing it. The Americans are doing it. The Germans are doing it.
Exactly.
The English are doing it. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is natural because there are not everybody is so everybody is doing it. Then yes, this is the ideal scenario, ideal situation.
What do you mean it's ideal? It's not ideal. It's nonsense.
No, no. Ideal situation means that whatever we are saying that we should not have this these things, right? But that is not a reality in the material world. So
Wait a minute. The material world is full of falsity, not reality. The false concepts, the hazy consciousness, right? It's hazy out there. You can't see it as it is. You're seeing some cloudy vision of it. You know, so that cloud is in our brain, and when we see things, we don't really see them correctly, and we imagine things about what we're seeing, right? So this is like when you say that, like when Putin says that Ukraine is not a country; it was always part of Russia. That's his concept, right? And therefore, you know, we can't let Ukraine join NATO. You know, it's part of us. It's our country. It's our land. So this our land, right? The Muslims are saying that Hindus, they should leave India. This is our country now. You know, so this is our land. And then when you say Vande Mataram, you're paying allegiance to the land, right? So Hindus and the Muslims, they're talking the same nonsense. This is our land. What do you mean it's your land? It's Krishna's land. It doesn't belong to you. But no, they're claiming it belongs to me.
yeah, it is true that Krishna's land. But what happens if you look at the history of India? Like
If you what?
Look at the history of India.
Yeah.
Like everybody comes because whatever we in India, like our culture, right? Okay, we will always Atiti Deva Bhava. Everybody will welcoming. We never said, oh, this is only our country or something. And what happens? We can see like last 800 years, everybody screwed up India left and right, from British to Muslim, everybody, because we never has
No. That's a wrong
strongly
interpretation.
standing.
That's a wrong. Who screwed up were the Brahmanas in India. See, now I'm going to give you an example. When Genghis Khan ruined the caliphate in what's called Iraq today, but there used to be a caliphate right after, right, Muhammad comes around 600. By 800, you have this gigantic Muslim, kingdom, and you have the caliph. And Genghis Khan comes and ruins the whole thing. They took over. But in 100 years, the Muslims convinced them all to accept Islam. And then they established the caliphate against. The Brahmanas failed India by not convincing the Muslims to become followers of Sanatana Dharma. They rejected them. And they rejected anyone that had anything to do with them. That's why so many people converted. It's their fault. It's not the fault of the Muslims. The Muslims were conquered by these wild people that came from Mongolia or other places, but they were able to convince them by preaching and intermarriage and so forth to become Muslim. You see? So it's the fault of the Brahmanas, the false Brahmanas, the same ones who are doing animal sacrifices and saying it's prasadam. Huh?
Puja for hire,
Puja for hire, yeah.
false interpretation of the scriptures.
Mayavad philosophy, yeah. There's a whole list.
Whole list.
I have a whole list. I wrote a book on it. You can read the book. It's on the webpage. It's a whole book about all the misconceptions in modern Hinduism. You understand? It's not natural that we should protect our borders. What's natural is, even if people come into into so-called borders, there are no borders. Everything belongs to Krishna. It's not our land. It all belongs to Krishna. But if people come in, it's our duty to train them to be Krishna conscious. But if we say, no, we're not going to have anything to do with them, and anyone that works with them, or if the water of their hand wash touches one of our guys, they become Muslim, or we reject them. What kind of a philosophy is that? What kind of mercy is that? There's no mercy. You look at the history of Subudhi Rai. Subudhi Rai was a good, let's say, Hindu, right? Or he was part of the Hindus, right? But actually he was a devotee. But when he was early on, this Muslim boy was working for him, right? And he did something wrong, so Subudhi Bai gave him a whipping lashes, and it left a scar on his back. Later on, this Muslim boy grew up and he became the leader of the whole area where Subudhi Bai was living. He became the king. And one day, the Hanum, the wife of the king, saw him after he took a shower, and she saw this big scar on his back. And she said, "Which battle did you get that scar from?" He said, "No, it wasn't a battle. I was beaten once by this Hindu." Said, "What? You were that kafir touched your sacred body and has left this stain on it?" He said, "No, I did something wrong." "How? You don't do anything wrong, you know." So she said, "Who is that man?" He said, "This guy named Subudhi Raja. I want him dead. If you don't kill him, I'll commit suicide." Hanum is really, a powerful lady. So he was stuck here, So what happens every month? He would go on a procession on an elephant throughout his kingdom, or his capital. And one day he saw Subudhi Rai, amongst the people. So he stopped the elephant in the parade, and he called Subudhi, he told his soldiers, "Go get him, bring him close to me." And he looked at him, and he showed everyone. He washed his hands, he threw the water on him. And Subudhi Rai now had to become a Muslim. Everyone rejected him because he threw water on him. Muslims' hand water went on him. So he went to see some Brahmins. He went to see one Brahmin and said, "How can I purify myself? I don't want to become a Muslim." He said, "Well, it's difficult." He said, "I know, but you know what to do. What can I do?" He said, "Well, you have to melt some lead and drink it. And if you survive, you'll be purified." said, what? Drink liquid lead? He said, I'm going to die. I said, well, there's no other solution. I'm sorry. So he went to see some other Brahmin, huh? No, he went to see another Brahmin. Yeah, you have to become a Muslim. The other Brahmin said, well, what did the other one say? He said, you have to drink molten lead. No. You boil ghee and drink it when it's boiling. I said, what? Drinking boiled ghee? I'll burn my whole esophagus. So I don't know. There's no other solution. So then, Subhuti Rai was confused, right? They're not giving him any viable way of avoiding becoming Muslim. So he goes to see Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya said, go immediately to Vrindavan. Renounce everything. Go immediately to Vrindavan and serve the devotees. He said, so many people are coming from Bengal to Vrindavan. And, these northern Indians, all they do is they eat rotis all the time, But our people, they like rice. So you get the best rice. You take some of the best rice. And when they come, you give them the rice, and you give them a massage with mustard oil, because we Bengalis, we have to have mustard oil massage. He said, okay, I'll do that. So he didn't enter Vrindavan. He stayed on the outside of Vrindavan, and he served the devotees. And he didn't become a Muslim. He remained a devotee. You see? This was how crazy the situation was in India. And who made it crazy is the Brahmins. Instead of convincing the Muslims to become devotees, they helped the Muslims convert people to Islam. That's the real history. Do you agree with that? No. Huh? Think about it. Haribol. Why is it, if I go to India today, I try and get into the Jagannath Puri temple, they won't let me in.
That is true.
No, but that's the same thing, don't you understand?
Yeah.
That's the same thing as, if you get touched by the water or hand wash from a Muslim, you have to become a Muslim, you're no longer a Hindu. It's all nonsense. How about Rupa and Sanatana Goswami? Because they were working for the Nawab, they were rejected as Hindus. And they virtually became Muslims, right? Until they met Lord Chaitanya. This was going on in India.
So the solution is follow the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. That is the only way.
That's the only way. Yeah. Because the Lord is merciful. And he doesn't just preach to Hindus. He was preaching to everybody. He was trying to raise everybody up to Krishna consciousness. So he convinced Jains, and he convinced Buddhists, and he convinced Pathans, Muslims, right? And he convinced Chankazi, right? So he didn't say, no, you have to reject these people, they're the kafirs, we're not the kafirs, they're the kafirs. No, he didn't talk like that. Prabhupada comes to America and makes hippies into devotees, right? He doesn't say, although they can't become devotees, they're smoking marijuana and engaging in illicit activity. No.
If anybody would have seen the conditions of the hippies, people would have just left.
Of course. It was, I was there. I was not a devotee at the time. I was there. It was horrible. The first time I went to Tonkin Square, when I was still not a devotee, I saw two men kissing on a bench. I'd never seen that before. I said, what's going on here? It's crazy. Even though I was stoned at that time, but even I looked at that, I said, this is crazy. I want to get away from this place. That's where Prabhupada started the movement.
Prabhupada cooked for them, cleaned, washed, fed.
Yeah.
He served them.
Yeah, and he made them into devotees. He brought them back to India as white elephants, and Indians were shocked. They said, what's going on here? We're trying to be like them, and they're trying to be like us. Maybe we missed something, right? Okay, I won't stop anymore. Jai, Haribol. Jai. Huh? No, don't say that.
I read it slowly.
Don't say it, don't say it.
You got to say it quietly.
Prabhupada ki jai. You don't want to go to my head, and I get all puffed up.
That's why I said it quietly.
No, don't say it quietly.
It's not my. I have to say it. Otherwise, we don't know Prabhupada. So we know through Prabhupada, only through Prabhupada disciples.
What Prabhupada did is unbelievable. Unbelievable. But true. Go ahead. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bando mui savadana mate.
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara prasadi bai. E baba toriya jai.
Janara Prasade Bhai He Baba Toriya Jai
Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoyte.
Namapi Hoy Saoyte
Guru mukha padma vakya. Chitite koriya kya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Goriya
Arana kari ho mane asha.
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane rati. Aise utama gati.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Jai prasade pure sarva asha.
Ye Prasade Pure Sarvasa
Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme prabhu se.
Chakshudan Dil Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme prabhu se.
Chakshudan Dil Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Divya gyan hriday prakashita.
Divya Gyan Hide Prakasito
Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasha jate.
Prema Bhakti Jaite Avidya Vinasa Jate
Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasha jate.
Prema Bhakti Janoite Avidya Vinasa Bhakti
Vidigai jahara charito.
Vedega Janara Charito
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhana Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu.
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhana Janara Bandhu
Lokinath Lokera Jivana.
Vyas Chibumana
Aha Prabhu Karo Doya Deho More Padachaya.
Aha Prabhu Gora Doya Deya Mori Padachaya
Aha Prabhu Karo Doya Deho More Padachaya.
Aha Prabhu Gora Doya Deya Mori Padachaya
Ebe jas kushute bhuvana.
Vyas Chibumana
Prabhupada patita pavana.
Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Namah
Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Vishaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol
Jaya Go Hari Bol Hari Bol Jaya Go Hari Bol Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajika Chasta Tarasatara Shishi Shimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ananta Koti Vaishnava Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samkunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi all glories to the assembled God, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled God, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavan Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhasta Patita Bhakti Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Vaishnava Paskat Ya Desatarine Haribo. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna.
My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet, Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
birthday. Haribol. Okay, one second, just 1 second. I'll be right back.
Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prashtaya. Hare Krishna. Oh, Hare Krishna. Madhavam. Happy birthday, Madhavam. Many more happy returns of the day. Wish you very, very happy Krishna conscious